A massive, potentially corrupt and oppressive state power. This is the voice of freedom. Magna Carta 1215 Learning Centre. Welcome to your next lesson with hosts Fitzroy and Carl.
That's me. Well, I'm one of them. Here's the other one. Hello, Fitz. How are you, mate?
Good evening, Carl. Good evening, everyone. Lovely to be back in our regular spot. Lovely to see you smiling again too, Carl.
I'm a bit tired.
Yes, still cracking a smile. So bless you.
No, it's been I got to say, it's been a long 8 or 9 days on the road so far, and only because of trouble we've had trying to get this new gear working. Did a few extra kilometres, a trip to Wagga and back that was required, but we managed to get the gear working. So very keen on that. Had to hang around over the weekend because there was a little bit of work I had to do this morning for a client here in Canberra, and then we'll probably hit the road at some stage tomorrow and depart the Galactic Larrikin Lounge Room and head off to places north at this juncture. We're still trying to get together and bed down our dates for South Australia. So if you are interested in having a Magna Carta show or anything like that in South Australia in February, March, let us know. That'll be Cherie at vofhq.com. Other than that, it's been, just mentally tiring, I guess, mate. And Canberra is just, I don't know, there's a feeling about Canberra, and it's not necessarily a good feeling until you get around good people like Veteran Dan and the crew, the Canberra Standers. They're a great bunch of people and very dedicated and still able to have a bloody good laugh after almost a year daily at the Governor-General's. We went yesterday and experienced a Sunday morning stand, and I got to say, very moving, very moving. I stopped it before we got into the musical side of things because of copyright reasons and all that. I didn't know what they were going to do, so didn't get to see that. But there was a beautiful, beautiful ending to the service with one of the most magnificent renditions of Amazing Grace I've ever heard. A very, very powerful morning there. I'm going to pop in and see them tomorrow morning as well on our way out. So looking forward to seeing the guys there before we head off tomorrow. There's common law's been in the news a bit lately, Fitz. There have been a number of arrests, people having their car windows smashed by police before having themselves unceremoniously bundled out of the vehicle. Couple of those occasions. There is a lot of press going on at the moment calling those types of people, or anybody who is claiming a common law knowledge at least, sovereign citizens. You wouldn't expect more of today's journalists, and I say that in inverted commas. Sovereign and citizen are not two words that go together in this context. And part the reason that they use it is that they do not understand that. They do not understand the difference. So, Fitz, we got a lot of people now who have woken up to the idea that there are common law people out there. Are they just tinfoil hat wearers? What's going on? Now we're seeing mainstream media get this footage and air it, but they don't air it in a very good way. So what's this doing for the movement?
Yeah, well, I actually see it as encouraging, to be honest, because no movement's ever perfect. They have to learn and fumble their way through things. It's more about the resilience and the resolve. So if it's now making mainstream coverage, that means they're in a panic, right? Because if they're trying to shut it down by getting into people's minds to make them look like they're totally out of their mind for standing up for rights, right? And the media can do whatever they like, right? We saw what they did with COVID. They twist things that are totally irrational, that no one would ever accept, but they can just twist it in a way because that's what they're paid to do, to make it appear as if this is the rational way to do things, and anyone who defies it is irrational, right? That's their expertise. So the fact that they're turning people who are, standing up against tyranny and turning them into like their mental cases is very encouraging, because that means they're in a panic. So I actually see this as a positive thing. Now it's a process of elimination, right? So now it's about, are people going to learn what the things to do that don't work? Are they really going to learn this, right? And eventually it always comes back to the same thing. People will go and they'll choose what seems to be the path to least resistance, and there's never any principle involved, right? They'll choose that first, and they'll exhaust every avenue down that path because they get psychological comfort from it. At the end of the day, once they, exhaust all those options, there's only going to be one left, right? But they don't want to do it the fast way. They want to do it the slowest, agonizing way they can find and exhaust all those options. And when there's no options left and there's nothing else but principle, that's when they'll settle on it, But we could have done this a lot quicker if we just went straight to principle. But human beings have a way of making this agonizing. So this is part of that process.
Yes, I think that is part of the waking up process. We've got to go through it first to find out how we could have done it in a less painful way.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is all part of that process. So, we're going to go through a bit of that tonight, actually. And the footage that we promised last week, we're going to lead with that tonight. So I'm really excited we get to show it.
Well, let's do that. Let's kick off. So do you want to do that introduction on that piece again?
Yeah, so this is the project. Couldn't believe it when I heard it and saw it. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I was so excited to find out about this, because they've actually gone out of their way to make sure they commit sedition, and there's evidence of it, right? This is evidence. They have denied the only constitution that exists across the entire Commonwealth realm, right, and called it part of the sovereign citizen movement. They've bundled it all in together in the one, and then they make a parody of it, right? And so it's just brilliant. Like, you got to think how badly they're panicking. That they were willing to do that. Yeah, so this is wonderful. So we're going to break it down at the end. We'll play it. It goes for about 5 minutes, and then we'll break it down into small pieces so you can understand just what they've done.
All right, let's have a look.
A former magistrate has hit out at the sovereign citizen movement, saying none of them has successfully proven their case. So what exactly is this group about?
Sovereign citizens. They look just like you and me, only they're exempt from the laws of the land, aren't required to pay taxes, and don't have to obey the will of courts, either law or food. At least that's what they believe.
I'm private, so I'm not under any public law.
Natural licence? You're just operating under your own...
Law of morality, LORE.
Sovereign citizen origin can be traced to an American group in the 1970s who promoted anti-government conspiracy theories. But the movement has exploded recently in the wake of pandemic response measures.
Look, the tinfoil hat-wearing brigade are alive and well out there in our community, and they're taking every opportunity to leverage the current situation to serve their own ridiculous notions about so-called sovereign citizens.
The core of their belief is that anyone must first consent to laws in order to be governed by them, a sort of opt-in box for democratic rule. They often cite Magna Carta in their defence. Not Jay-Z and Beyonce's little-known fourth child, but the Charter of Rights agreed to by King John in the 13th century. Former magistrate David Halpern has heard hundreds of arguments from people who believe they don't have to obey laws they don't like, and says none of them hold water.
You don't need a driver license to travel with your automobile. You need a driver license if you make money for what you're doing, if it's for commerce.
So is this movement just a handful of people with a misguided concept of freedom, or something we should be concerned about?
The former magistrate David Halpern joins us now. David, you've had hundreds of sovereign citizens before you in court. What do you think is at the heart of all this?
Look, I think the movement has grown considerably over the last couple of years, post-COVID, post the anti-vaccination movement. I think that gave it a boost. And I think that people are looking to challenge the law, which is a healthy thing, but this is really the extreme end of it. And people seem to be after a quick fix to avoid penalties and fines and their own liability for things that would otherwise be crimes.
What I don't understand is, isn't the point of the sovereign citizen that their claims wouldn't hold up in court? So they're trying to claim separation from the legal system.
There's two players at work here. There's the people who come to court and try and argue it, and then there's the people behind the movement who are selling kits online and selling the story online that you can beat your charges by claiming a pseudo-law argument that you're a sovereign citizen, that you're a member of a corporate state, that if you change your name to a person, that magistrates have no power. And those people are the ones who are really promoting the argument and quoting all these cases that they say they've won. So that's right. The whole idea is the law doesn't apply, and then they come to court and argue that the law doesn't apply.
And around we go. You say nobody has successfully argued the sovereign citizen case. Have they just not found the right argument?
No. I think, look, unique arguments are terrific. Mabo was an argument that overturned years of terra nullius. But this is so left field. I mean, this is people claiming that the criminal laws just don't apply to them because they decide that they are no longer part of the corporate entity known as Australia under the Magna Carta and all the other stuff that they go on with. So it really is so way out there that it doesn't have any possibility of ever being upheld by any court, and it never has been.
Well, you say that, David, until one of them's your client, right? I mean, you're a lawyer and you like playing with legal arguments. If one of them came to you and you were going to represent them, could you construct an argument? Could you think of anything you'd be able to say to the court?
Look, lawyers have a responsibility. Their first responsibility is to their clients, but also they have a responsibility to the court. And if I was asked to put some of those pseudo-law arguments, I would say, no, I've got a responsibility to only put arguments that carry some legal weight. And if they're absolute gobbledygook and complete garbage and from fantasy land, then I wouldn't put them. I'd go and tell them to get another lawyer or represent themselves. And that is why, incidentally, they largely represent themselves, because they're not going to find a lawyer who will besmirch their own reputation and break their own professional rules by arguing something that they know is complete garbage.
David, it's always fascinating to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Well, there you go. Where do you begin with that?
Yeah, look, that's a ripper. Like they've all committed sedition and they've called it gobbledygook. You know what I mean? They've called because they've bundled it all in together, and they've bundled in the Magna Carta, which is the only agreement by which a nation state has been agreed to exist. To create one, and they've called that gobbledygook. It's brilliant. Like, I love it. But yeah, he starts off by saying that a sovereign citizen believes they're exempt from the laws of the land. So the funniest part is that they keep mixing the word law and legal the whole time.
Yes.
So that confusion is really easy. If you're just an average sleeper, you just think law and legal are the same thing. You're not going to know that the two are separate. Like, laws of the land are the moral codes that we live under. That's actually what the laws of the land mean. And so they're actually projecting their own situation that they believe they're exempt from the laws of the land, right? So it's a massive projection. This is the funniest part, right? Because they're running a legal system. And if we've gone over this before, anyone who knows the definition of legal is the undoing of God's law. And what's another way of saying God's law? The laws of morality, right? So they believe themselves to be exempt from those very laws. So they're telling you what they're doing. And he does it over and over again. So it's quite funny. And so he says, they believe they don't have to pay for taxes. And now there's so much evidence coming out that this whole taxation department is one massive fraud, right? But the sleepers don't know that. So they're going to present things in a way where the sleepers believe this is a good moral thing to do to pay your taxes, right? So what they're doing is they're triggering on those nerve centers that the sleepers are still attached to, right? So they're triggering their emotions by presenting it in a way that makes it look like these people who are these sovereign citizens, right, these baddies, right, believe themselves better. That's what they're really doing than everyone else. It's the way they frame it, right? So it's got nothing to do with reality. It's all in the framing and what's suggested in the framing. And then they drop a really ridiculous one when he says they believe themselves to be exempt from courts, and food courts. And then they show a picture of a food court.
Yeah.
It's like, what's that got to do with anything?
Yeah,
that's no totally sense. Nonsensical. So they're even showing you what kind of a clown show this is, right? And I did see someone else try and cover this, another sort of truther channel, and they just glossed over all this really important stuff. So tonight we're actually going to, break it down into just how absurd this whole presentation is, right? And then what they do, they show these people trying out these free man of the land techniques, right? Saying they come under LORE, right?
I was going to ask you, can you explain to people who may not know the difference between LAW law and LORE law?
So LAW law, if you go from the codified position, the ones who believe they're using common law, but they're actually using codified law, LAW stands for land, air, and water, right? There's 3 different jurisdictions. Land is the law of the land, which is meant to be the moral laws that we live under, that we know the universal principles of morality. Air is ecclesiastical, and what they say that is above the laws of morality. That's what those who believe it. Like ecclesiastical is the highest law because it's up in the air, right? And then they've got the water, which is the law of the merchants, right? So that's the law of trade, commerce. And so that's what people who use LAW to mean something that's been invented by a religious superstition, and they call themselves common law gurus, they explain it that way. Then you've got LORE, which is very similar, and they say that that's what the First Nations people operate under, which is not actually true. They never had anything to do with, because theirs is land, ocean, river, and earth. Now, river and ocean, they're 2 versions of water. It's just absurd, right? So it's like saying now this is a more holistic approach. This is all white man stuff, this LORE stuff. They don't have that, right? It's not even in their language.
Yeah.
But they get you to try and believe it is, right? So the 2 things are different versions of the same fraud, right? So they get these people, who are on camera making stuff up that doesn't exist in reality. And then they try and bundle them in with people who are actually standing on principle, who actually stand on that constitution that is actually verifiable, that is the highest code of conduct of any nation within the British Commonwealth realm, right? And they try and bundle all of that in because they know that the average person doesn't know this. And then they try and say that, the sovereign citizen movement starts back in the 1970s in USA. That might have some foundation, but that's got nothing to do with the Magna Carta. So they what they do is they try and shove everyone into that one tiny little confined space, and they never show the nuances. This is not about information. This is all about tarring us with the same brush to make us all look like we deserve to be punished for being freaks. That's pretty much what the message is here. And then they say things like, that we don't consent to laws that we don't like. That's basically what they say. Well, you can't not consent to a law because a law is something that's universal.
True.
So they don't even understand that you don't get to choose whether you consent to a law because you're bound by it. If you understand the true meaning of a law, it's the actual conditions upon which we live under that our survival is dependent upon. So you can't consent to it and get away from it. It's, it's not a thing you can do. So, but the way they structure it is that anything the government creates, is a law, right? And then they say we don't need to be governed by them, right? And then they chuck all the people who are, proponents of Magna Carta under that. But then how do they do it? They start mocking it, trivializing it, making an association with some celebrities, right? Like, what the hell's that got to do with anything? And then they make this very brief comment about King John, but then tie it in with these. So it's totally bamboozling. It's like the best clown show in town. And then they say they don't obey the laws they don't like. Again, it's got nothing to do with laws. It's got everything to do with this fake system. And like, that's now, you are now like a scoundrel if you want to stand up for the laws of morality. But you'll never see it that way because they're presenting it as in the government is the ones who are on the side of morality. That's how they present it, right? They're here to look after you based on what's moral. And so it's all about the phrasing, right? It's just the twisting and the inverting. And then he does a ripper, this guy. I mean, I've never heard of this guy. I don't know if anyone else has. I'd love to find out if anyone's ever heard of this guy. But when I look at him with his puffed up eyes and his saggy lip, this guy looks like he's just had a stroke, right? And he's barely speaking. And his eyes are wandering all over the place. So I don't know where they dragged this guy from. He could be an actor. We just don't know.
Oh, I've just looked him up. So Harm Reduction Australia was appointed a magistrate in 1998. And it was at that time the youngest magistrate in Australia. He retired in May 2020. He's an AM, a radical lawyer, apparently.
He's an AM. Well, there we go. That's all we need to know.
Well, once you've got a medal. Yeah, once you've got a medal.
Yeah. He's a made man. He's in the club.
Yeah.
So, he's just one of the made men in the mafia that's protected. I'm just looking at him going.
Thank you, Paul, for your for your sticker, but Paul raises an interesting point here, which I'm going to bring up with Spiros tomorrow night when he asks or answers some legal questions. During lockdowns, police issued millions of fines only to be cancelled. Why? Because the law was wrong. Now, those people that were issued those fines, I'm starting to think might well, and particularly the ones who have had paid those fines and had not had the money reimbursed, but there might be others for mental anguish and everything else suffered under those illegal fines and the actions taken by particularly Victorian police to enforce them. I think that's going to be an interesting question tomorrow night for Spiros. So thank you, Paul, but be listening tomorrow night. I reckon that's going to be the question of the night tomorrow night. Although I've got a few really good questions for him tomorrow night, so watch out for that one. Spiros tomorrow night on the show. Hello, Tasha Marie. Don't know who's the desperado, but lovely to have you in for the show tonight. JJ, you too. Of course, the inimitable Sunflower is with us. Hello, darling. And just having a bit of a glance down some of the comments here. The Statute of Marlborough, 1267, for reformation there of statutes and laws be right necessary. Clearly two separate things since Magna Carta time. You following that, Fitz?
No, I don't really understand what's got to do with what we're talking about here. Like he's just promoting a statute, and statutes are a fictional invention of government that's got nothing to do with law or morality. So anyone who mentions that as having some authority is really not understanding what we're doing here. There's only one way to live, and that's moral. And anyone who grants you your rights or tries to, enhance them, it's a trick. Your rights cannot be enhanced. It's not possible. So, but you'll hear these people make these arguments all the time, and it's just absurd. And they unfortunately miss the real point, right? You're born with rights, and you can't go any higher than that. It's just that simple. But I did want to just keep going a bit more over some of the other points that this magistrate or former magistrate, he says things like looking to challenge the law is healthy. No, it's not. Not if it's the actual law. Anyone who challenges the laws that we're bound to, it's not a healthy thing. What he's talking about is looking to challenge the corrupt system as healthy, but he makes it look like it is. Yeah. And then he's saying that those who actually stand under the laws of morality are at the extreme end. I mean, could you imagine? It goes from worst to absurd. And then he says that, we're looking for a quick fix to avoid penalties and fines. Now, unfortunately, this is the really negative thing about people who get into this, what they call common law. It's actually true. A lot of people just want a quick fix to get rid of something that, they don't want to have to deal with. Even if it's immoral, what's happened to them, I agree. But that's their sole motivation. And that's why 1215 Magna Carta isn't sexy for a lot of people, because it doesn't give you that psychological comfort that you're going to get a win. And most people, we've gone over this, guys. If you've listened to the other lessons, we spoke about what competition does. And that sets up the winner and loser, right? The world has to be split into two. And so still today, right, the majority of people who are coming to stand up against this corrupt structure are still coming from a position of self-indulgence. They must get a win. And if they don't get a win, they just rubbish it. Where principle is timeless. It doesn't go away. And if you don't stand in defense of it, then you're standing in defense of the very thing you say you're fighting. And we covered it the week before as well. And that's that self-indulgence, right? That's getting what I want for me right now, And then he goes on to say, they don't want to take personal liability for crimes. It's not a crime to be in breach of immorality. That's an oxymoron, right? So they won't go and explain any of this. They'll just phrase it in a way that if you don't accept these criminal impositions, there's something the matter with you, And then the female host goes and phrases it, says the point of sovereign citizens is that they don't hold any credence to these courts, these fake courts, that they're claiming separation from the legal system. Well, yes, because the legal system has no bearing on reality. It's an immoral structure designed to imprison moral people. So of course they would want to. But yes, I agree. To go into their courts, absolutely, you are just granting authority to them. So that's what we've been saying for a long time, is that, you follow this process, you don't step into their fake courts, because that's what you're doing. So they are correct in that one. And then the magistrate says there's two types of people, the ones who enter the fake courts and the other ones that sell the kits online to sell it to beat charges. Well, they are correct. There are a lot of people, and guys, start thinking about what you've done. If you've paid for anything that you think is knowledge, right? this is actually correct. You've actually been sucked in, because truth you cannot sell. It's not something you can sell, but you can sell someone's beliefs, and that's what you've paid for. And then he says they're claiming pseudo arguments. So now they're bundling the 1215 Magna Carta in with these people who do use codified law, right? So they're bundling it all in, But then he says something really great. He says the member of the corporate state of Australia. He actually says Australia is a corporate state. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, he's actually telling us that Australia is not a nation, it's a corporation, and that we wish to separate from. So he actually told the truth. And I'm just like, wow, I couldn't believe it. And then he goes on to say, find the right argument. When it's law, you don't argue against law. You can't argue against law. Law is immutable. It can't be changed. So it's like totally ridiculous to even attempt it. So the fact that they're going, these legalesers, these what you call lawyers, they actually, will go and argue what they call law. Well, then they don't argue law. They're arguing over an opinion. And that's what the legal system is. It's just someone's opinion. And so,
I think Spiros describes best what happens in a court and why lawyers are so required. It is because, as he says, we don't speak English. In a court, we speak turnip. And he's 100% right.
Yeah. So, he's actually come out and said it. They've got no basis in reality. That's what they get taught to do.
But he says, we don't speak English. Now, in that is the inference that we're not speaking the Queen's English, but we are. What we're not speaking is judicial English or legalese. That's the language that he speaks, obviously, very well, but we are missing. If you haven't done any legal training, if you haven't jumped the bar, past the bar, they jump plenty of bars, then you don't know this little secret, so to speak. But that is that every lawyer, doesn't matter whether you're a defense or a prosecution lawyer, every lawyer understands this thing, and that is that in the court, they speak the language of the court, which sounds like English, but as you and I have discussed previously, Fitz, they've changed the meaning of words. As we've discussed previously in other shows, the great term written by the people for the people. Today, people believe that, the people wrote that for the people. But back when that term was actually written by the people for the people, the word for meant in favor of or to favor the people. So laws written by the people to favor the people. That's how the words have been changed on us. And that's why when we go into a court of law and don't have a lawyer, we are literally speaking turnip. I think it's a beautiful way of describing it.
So they're actually telling us what they're really doing. That was the best part of this whole thing.
Yeah.
They're actually showing us that they've actually been playing these games with us. And, because the majority of people who would watch this would have no clues of how they've been sold a lemon. They would just accept it all as truth and fact. But I did want to just cover a few more things. So he says about finding the right argument. A Mabo was an argument, right, that overturned years of terra nullius. So he does give you some information about terra nullius, if anyone knows what that means. It means that this landmass was deemed to be uninhabited, and the people on it that they saw were deemed as flora and fauna, right? So, he does point you to, the crimes and stuff that were happening, but how many of the sleepers would know what terra nullius means? Very few would know that, right? So that would mean nothing to them. And Mabo, this is something they saw on TV. But if you can win your rights through an argument, they're not rights. It's so, if you can understand principle, it just cuts right through it. And then he says, that these sovereign citizens, they decide the criminal laws don't apply because they are no longer part of the corporate entity known as Australia under the Magna Carta. Like he says, the Magna Carta now, And then they go on with this other stuff that it's all like the Magna Carta is some fictional invention. It's got nothing to do with anything that's really factual.
I particularly like the fact that the sovereign movement or the sovereign citizen movement started back in the 70s.
Yeah, I know. It's a ripper.
Well, the 1270s maybe. Might have been when organisation started happening, but it was around the same time as politics. But yeah, that strange blonde-headed woman that has replaced the two other strange women on the project hasn't the vaguest idea. And I have a sneaking suspicion Sarah is a little older. She's, I think, mid-40s. But I guarantee that the copy that she's reading is being written by some, little thing that's just come out of university and has an opinion that thinks the opinion is more based in fact than fact.
Yeah, well, I mean, once you pay someone who's immoral enough, they'll do whatever they need to get that money. And so we know what these commercial stations are all about. They just find the most immoral people that can present like they're moral. It's just, an inversion of truth. But, he's saying things that, and he bundles Magna Carta in, that they're so way out there, it has no way of being held up in their fake courts. Of course, it won't be held up in the fake courts because anything that's based in truth has got nothing to do with their fake courts. And then that Waleed, he says, you're a lawyer. You like playing with legal arguments. I mean, that's got nothing to do with law, right? So he's even showing what they do. They like to play with arguments, right? So they're really showing what they're doing, right? The corrupt system that they're running, they're telling us all about it. And then, the fake magistrate, whatever he is, he says lawyers' first responsibility is to their client, but also have a responsibility to that fake court. So he's basically telling you that they're all wedded into the same game, and the client is irrelevant because really the responsibility is to that court because you can't have responsibility to both. It's not possible.
Yeah.
Are you going to be responsible to your client or to the court? Because the court has its own set of rules, right? Then you have to abide by. So you're not going to have responsibility to the client because the client is a sentient being, and the sentient being does not operate by these fake rules. So there's no way you could have a responsibility. But because they've used the word client, and client is a fictional invention, that's how they get away with it. But most people, when they're hearing it, they're thinking client is a living man or woman. And then he claims laws of morality contained within the 1215, which is the agreement for a construction of a nation state, which I said earlier, are pseudo law arguments, when really everything they're doing is pseudo law. So they're, again, projecting their inner world to the outside world. They are telling you what they are doing, except that they're projecting it onto the people that they're actually trying to nail to the cross.
That's right.
And then he says, that the lawyer has a responsibility to put forward arguments that carry some legal weight. Yes, they do. Their job is to argue things that are fictional, someone's personal biases and prejudice. So he's correct there. But then he calls those who stand in morality as people who are offering gobbledygook, complete garbage, fantasy land. Again, another projection and a way to gaslight the people.
Yeah.
And then at the end, he says largely represent themselves because a lawyer won't risk their reputation by breaking professional rules. Yes, they won't breach their oath to the bar guild because that's the end of it for them if they do. So, there's a bit of truth in there as well, right? It's just the way that it's constructed and framed that the average sleeper won't have a clue about what they're really saying. So I just wanted to dig into that and to give people, a little bit of understanding of how they ran that whole fraud to bamboozle people who are not aware of what they're really saying. And I'm just looking at this comment here about I got screwed over at the airport today. I stood on principle and left them with a dose of what it means to stand in morality. Your lessons helped me find the strength to do so. This is the whole point, guys. Like, if you really want to change the world, you stand on principle and you'll see what happens, right? Eventually they will crumble and they will use fear tactics to silence you. That's what they'll do. Because at the end of the day, no uniform, no weapons can defeat the principles of morality. It's not possible. And when you bring it to their attention, their consciousness can't handle it. The ego jumps over the top and then they use fear tactics to shut you up. And so this is the thing. This is how they run it. And the whole structure, if you dig deep, you'll see it's the same play every time. They set it up that they always have to win and you're going to lose. And if you don't take it lying down, they'll make sure you do. They'll find a way to throw you.
Sorry, mate.
I was just going to say they'll find a way to throw you in this endless loop where you're just chasing your tail, or they'll just run roughshod right over you. It's the two key things, the way they run.
I hope you got where you were planning to go today, Blue. Or doesn't sound like you were too successful, but next time, maybe, I know it's difficult, but maybe film that sort of interaction too, because now that you've been empowered a bit to do this, then when you do this, film it, because it will empower others. You've seen the effects that some of the other things that you've seen have had on you. For instance, it's given you the ability to stand up and use that inner strength. So if you can film it or get somebody else to film it who's with you at the time, then all the better for it. But congratulations on standing up, and love to, if you're still in the chat, let us know down the bottom how you got on the plane or not. But standing up on principle is absolutely ideal. And you're getting a lot of congratulations in the chat that I'm seeing. Somebody in there says they don't see anybody else in the chat, so they think it's all fake and have disappeared off. They could be in any one of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chat rooms, and I'm not sure that anybody else is in theirs. Yes, Truth Voice says they spoke gobbledygook and gibberish. Unfortunately, yes, but that is the language of the court, and got to go and got to go and deal with that. Hello, Sunflower, wonderful lady that she is. 1870s when the Illuminati started. No, they started a bit earlier than that. We'll get onto that one in another night. And I wanted to say hi to Aussie Sue, who I think I forgot in the open. So hello, Aussie Sue. No, you're around. Now, Fitz, we've got a document to share.
Yes, so this got sent to me, and when I read it, I'm like, oh, this is perfect, right? This really explains why there's so much fracturing in the movement, the freedom movement, and that it's a deliberate thing, and how many people get sucked in. And it's too long to read the whole thing, so I've only requested to read up to one section, and we can break it down into different sections on different lessons. But every single aspect of this, what this author's written here, this article, is well worth a read for anyone who's really, really interested in getting to the heart of the matter of why the freedom movement is unable to get off the ground. And this really, so we're just going to touch on it tonight. We're not going to get into the bones of it, but at least it's just a good read.
The introduction, if you like.
Yeah.
And it's called Economic Resistance, and the author is Charlie O'Neill. This was only written on July 4th of last year. And some really interesting artwork to kick it all off. You might want to freeze frame that at some point and actually go and have a bit of a look at how intricate that artwork is and what it is. Introduction. One of the characteristics of the current system in the near limitless funds it can deploy on any given project, a result of the extensive credit creation abilities given to it by the fractional reserve banking system. Coupled with the system's intense focus on any dissident group that could disrupt its core projects, this creates a situation where any serious anti-system movement is almost guaranteed to be flooded with a bewildering array of infiltrators, saboteurs, informants, as well as generally well-meaning yet disastrous individuals who are steered towards it on purpose by covert regime propagandists. The goals of those who've been sent to deliberately infiltrate or missteer a dissident movement in this way are varied, depending upon the particular nature of the movement in question and the perceived threat it poses to the ruling regime. But, in general, the objective seems to be to cause as much misdirection, kookiness, infighting, and poor decision-making as possible. The idea behind this approach seems to be that by occupying the space of any potentially effective opposition and filling it with ideas, individuals, and approaches that are both doomed to fail and inherently off-putting to the greatest number of people, the system can effectively neutralize any possible threat that might otherwise emerge towards it from that quarter, as well as wasting a huge amount of dissident time, energy, and funds that could otherwise be used in mounting a more effective resistance in general. For this reason, it is generally futile to spend more than the bare minimum amount of time trying to expose or refute those groups or individuals which we perceive to be, in some fashion, compromised or infiltrated. The very act of refuting or exposing them actually plays into the regime's hands, in fact, as part of the point in deploying such tactics in the first place was to waste our time and misdirect limited and precious energy that could be better employed elsewhere. Besides, given the system's effectively infinite reserves of funds and energy as compared to our own currently minuscule reserves, the result of exposing one of its agents or the ideas they are pushing will simply be that the resources which currently support them are immediately poured into some other similar project instead. Given the aforementioned almost limitless credit creation abilities of the system, this process could obviously continue almost indefinitely. In addition, another, in my opinion, secondary goal of this kind of sabotage and infiltration is to increase paranoia and distrust amongst those who genuinely oppose the system. This is obviously only exacerbated by people exposing ideas and individuals which were previously trusted within the movement in general. However, given the presence of numerous bad and terminally ineffective actors amongst dissident ranks, questioning, examining, and uncovering such individuals and ideas is unfortunately necessary if we actually want to achieve anything significant, rather than simply creating a feel-good echo chamber for ourselves. For a number of reasons, I have decided that this is a case where it is in fact worth spending some time looking into a particular ideology, common law, which it continues to enjoy wide support amongst dissident circles in general. Firstly, because I feel that the wider dissident movement, which crystallized out of a number of disparate smaller movements in response to the COVID coup, is currently losing its coherence and focus that this has occurred. And this has occurred in no small part to the increasing proliferation of smaller side movements and subgroups such as common law, free energy, anti-5G, etc., amongst those who were originally united around opposing the system as it actually and observably exists. Secondly, because beyond diverting vital time, energy, and money from our movement, which is bad enough in and of itself, the common law cult is also actually a net negative for many individuals within it. Many of the people who adopt its procedures and philosophy cannot afford the costly repercussions of failure, and I myself know of one individual who fell foul of common law advice they were given and only narrowly avoided serious consequences as a result, whilst also incurring significant financial losses in the process. Thirdly, I've decided to give my opinion on this matter because I feel that it is vital for us to speak up whenever we see people spreading the ideas we believe to be false and or useless within the dissident movement. After all, if we were not as effective, realistic, and focused as we can be, what hope can we stand of opposing a system that has effectively unlimited funds, vast manpower, and control of the means of ideological formation at its disposal? But beyond exposing the common law cult in particular, I hope this article will help people to reverse engineer how the system goes about sowing confusion within dissident ranks and how it manages to misdirect and frustrate its opponents in general. If the dissident movement could finally understand the mechanism used against it for this purpose and why they are so effective, it will hopefully not fall into similar traps in the future. As this particular scam has been so cleverly designed, and as it is currently occupying what should be a key position within our general defensive maneuvers against the system, i.e., the position of defending our fundamental rights by constructing a coherent philosophy of law, as well as understanding the system's true nature and function, I believe that it cannot be allowed to continue unopposed. I aim to show how what is usually referred to in dissident circles as common law is not only a completely different thing to the solid tradition of actual Anglo-Saxon common law, but is also incoherent and unverifiable as most of its unique claims go as well. I hope that by writing this essay, I will enable those who are sincere about reclaiming what should be their inherent rights and defending those of others to do so from a far better position. Finally, I must say that I am not a lawyer and I don't have any legal training, although I actually agree with the common law gurus that you shouldn't have to be in order to form an opinion on the subject. I am, however, in favour of the ancient principles of the historical common law in general, and I'm also in favour of the rediscovery and application of what is usually referred to as natural law, i.e., an inherently morally sound way of resolving disputes and acting in general. My primary interest, however, is in finding solutions for the dissident movement as a whole. But as this particular issue seems to be diverting so much energy away from important tasks and ideas, as well as causing people to grow seriously complacent regarding the system they are actually opposing, I've decided to spend some time explaining why I think that the ideology which calls itself common law is a dead end for our movement in general, as well as for the various individuals within it. Given the wide scope of the claims being made by those defending it, and the fact that most of the gurus I have come across make a whole range of different claims regarding it, as well as the lack of sources available to check most of its foundational theories against, I have researched the subject to the best of my ability. I welcome any criticism in the comments and will do my best to follow that up. Now, that is written, we'll go back up to the top, to Charlie O'Neill. And in the chat, I am posting a link. Fitz, that's all right, isn't it?
Yeah, please do. Guys, if you don't want to wait till next week, the rest of it is really good. It breaks it down piece by piece and it shows how that whole, every single thing that starts off pure gets infiltrated there's no exceptions, and exactly how it's done. And it's a formula, guys, they operate from. So if you want to learn how you're being controlled, carry on and reading it. So I love that you want to post that up, because if you don't want to wait, because next week we will cover that, because it's really important that we do really start showing how every single one who's ever stepped in those fake courts is running from these gurus, right, that are all part of the problem, and if we don't start understanding this, right, we're going to keep giving it more and more energy, and the changes are never going to happen, the ones that we say we seek. So this is why it's really important to really understand this. So yeah, I'm loving the fact that you're putting that out there. And I did want to say, Carl, I am in awe of you reading that, being that you're so tired and you just kept it going. So I'm so pleased you were able to deliver it with professionalism. So tip my hat to you, my friend.
Thank you, mate. I did fall over a bit of it, but that's all right. I am tired.
Well, for the most part, the intonation and everything, it was all had energy behind it. So that was the most important thing.
Try and get all the words right and put the correct emphasis on the right syllable. It makes all sorts of difference.
Yeah, so we're just going to finish on some videos that I found. It's all of the same recording, but I just took some excerpts out that were really, really pertinent and connect in with this whole structure we've been living under. So there's only 3 short ones. So I'm hoping they're ready to go, and we might even finish under an hour. That'll be amazing.
Woohoo! What are we at? Yeah. 48. Well, hang on. Let's get into it. So the first video I have up is contract slave trading.
Yep. So this is like really understanding that nothing's changed since, the classic slave trading where it was in your face, right? They've just found a different way to do it. So it's a really, really quick brief.
Yeah, basically getting us feeling that we're obliged to the government, the Commonwealth and corporations. And in reality, what they're doing, whether people like it or not, they're basically trading us as a part of their commerce. Yeah. And this is not unusual, because you look at the last 500 years of what happened to the African mob, that were taken across and basically enslaved and taken across to places like America. And they were literally traded like stock. So it's not unusual, I think, but we're still chattel today. Yeah. And what that looks like is that people are getting money for trading. You know, like people do get money for children that are removed from their families. They do get paid for people that are being incarcerated and so forth. So it's still exactly the same system that we're experiencing. But the problem is people aren't waking up.
Yep, ain't that the truth?
So I really loved it. Just how straightforward it is. There's nothing complicated there. It just showed you that we're still being traded. Every activity we do, right, is being traded. So, you know, when we buy something, that goes into our CQV, you know, and it gets traded, that, you know, showing, oh, this one's active, you know, so therefore they're going to be worth more to us than the ones who are less active. I mean, it's just, it's everything's about the siphoning off of our energy and attaining some kind of wealth from it. You know, that's how we get harvested. And so, yeah, this is, the whole system has been for that for forever. So yeah, there's a couple more same people, and they go talking about that in more specifics. So it's really worth a listen.
Okay, here we go.
There's just so much. Even Aboriginal legal aid. Sorry, sister, before Aboriginal legal aid with the solicitors, private, or it's all about money. These people they don't care about justice. They don't care about whatever else. These people are simply there for money, and it's determined, and the outcome is determined by money.
And they all have invested interests before you go to court. So if you've got a court date and it's 6 months away, your court number for your case, that's already been traded and earning money. Some of these people have investments that are in the millions for, say, a $9,000 fine that you go to court for. So there's everyone's always got financial interest in our behaviour. And so, as I was saying earlier, with the individuals, like they can only govern individuals, they had to then, because crime is such a number one, it is the number one commodity for them, they had to invent the criminal. And so how they went about that was that they observed us, how we naturally lived, what we naturally survived on, and then they made laws against that. So now when you look at it, where, you know, we want to travel, like it's a natural thing for us to want to, you know, travel. There's laws against that if we don't register, if we don't, you know, have an ID or a passport. Food, like, you know, you've got to go and buy food now if you're caught stealing food. Like, that's your basic survival, but yet they make laws around this, and so that's why I said, you look at COVID now. In the last 3 years, they've made laws now to make it that you can't gather with your family. You can't go and see your elderly family members. Like, when you look at it, they just are constantly making rules and laws and legislations to just keep, you know, clamping in on us. But at the same time, it's our natural way of living that they make laws against.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally want to do as humans. They've created a system where if they don't profit from it, you're acting illegally.
Truth, sister. My God, how true is that? If they're not profiting from it, you're doing something illegally.
So that's what I really love, because it ties back into the original video we started with, that whole sovereign citizen and how they think they're above their so-called laws, the legal system. Well, that's them trying to really shut the gates on the sheep, right? Like, we've got to get them back in the pen, because, you know, we can't have them escaping our structure where we're constantly siphoning off them. So that's why I love it. She really explains it really articulately. Now, someone else put up that he's on law and stuff like that. It doesn't really matter if he's on law for the purposes of this learning exercise, guys. So Don't get too hung up on, you know, what he follows. They're still stating things that happen to all of us, that all of us are bound to. So this is just information. It's not so much that I subscribe to, you know, all other things they say, but in everything, there's always an element of truth in everyone who comes and puts something forward. And this was a really, really important way to understand that when you step into their courts, you might have all the arguments you want. They're still going to dispense you under that system where they've harvested you. You know, they've created a case number. It's getting traded. You go in there, it goes up in value. You know, so it doesn't matter what arguments you put forward and what you think you can beat. You're still feeding that structure. That's why, you know, this is the only movement that I know about that says you do not go into their fake courts. You don't give them that energy. So that's why I thought that was a really important one to put forward. That, you know, they create crimes out of our natural behavior. Like, you got to think about that, guys. You know, and that COVID was a perfect example. So she lays it out really, really easily to follow and straightforward. And basically, it's really easy to follow, and there's no way you could get confused. So that's why I really liked it. It was really simple.
Yeah,
I think there should be. Is there one more that we got on that, Carl?
I got one more on that one. Yep, indeed. This is the corporate government crime enterprise.
The reason why we have contracts and you want to take it right back is because, again, this government, it's not about governing people. They only can run in the way of governing individuals. That's the only way that they can run. So you look at what's happened to First Nations, where families have been completely ripped apart, still are today. But if you want to look at non-Indigenous, the last 3 years should show you how they're coming after your families, because they cannot govern unity, they can't govern families, they can't govern unified communities, tribes, nations. Like, they must, their system only works as you as an individual. So what they did when they came here with a military agenda, and that they had to create a criminal in order to, again, start working for them, start making money, because crime and prisons are their number one commercial enterprise. That's where they get the most money from.
Sorry to cut you off, sister, but what you mean by that is that the number of bums on seats in a police station is determined by crime. So if the crime was low, these people wouldn't get paid. No. So how are we expecting these corporate agents, private corporate agents, to decrease the number of crime when that's basically asking these people to kind of
stop their revenue.
To stop them from getting paid, to stop paying their mortgages or their car loans and whatever else.
There you go.
So I just want to say what I love about that is when she actually says crime and prisons are their number one revenue raiser. Now, what was this a colony of? A colony of what? Prisoners.
Prisoners, yes.
Yeah. So that was all it was done for. It was done for that purpose alone. And so anyone who thinks this 1901 was some kind of way that we somehow, you know, have this common law, and I mean, it's right in front of your face, guys, you know. That's why I wanted to show it. Like, there's more and more evidence. You know, people are starting to really see what's there, and they're coming out with it. You know, the whole purpose of the police was never about justice. It was always about revenue raising, because their whole system relies on it. You know, last week or the night before we touched on Satanism. You know, like what that really means. So you know, it's one massive extension of the same structure. And so, if that's not enough evidence for me, guys, we're always finding new evidence for you. All right. That 1901 was always a bait and switch. That's all it was ever going to be. It was never going to be something about where you were going to have control, because you can't run a prison colony like that. You got to do it by stealth, you know, and that's all this ever was. So I'm hoping that's going to give you guys a little bit more food for thought, the ones who are still sitting on the fence and can't see the truth for what it is. We just got an announcement to do, Carl, and that we're pretty much done.
Mate, get into the announcements. I haven't got the page. It didn't turn up.
So it was just, was it like a PDF or a PNG that I sent you? It was just
haven't got it. I do have the these sorts of things from last week.
Yeah, so I didn't send you the file. Bugger.
No.
It was just it's just part of our promotion that we, not so much promotion, but our what am I doing? My brain just stopped working. We're doing like a little peek. We're piquing people's interest about, asking questions about what's really happening. So it's one of our awareness campaigns. The police conduct card we did last week, but this one was just about Magna Carta and what it really is. That's all it was.
Let me just go back. I'm just making sure.
So we just had a few points, and they're up in the Knowledge Centre. I've seen you put the links up, guys. This is about us all working together and putting the knowledge out for people. We've got these resources in the Knowledge Centre, guys, and the Telegram channel. The link's up there. If you want to be part of the solution, we are actually starting to promote the truth, that which stands on moral principle. We have the resources for you to actually start sharing that out into your networks. And the thing is about that, you never do it once. You do it, 12, 13, 20 times. You just keep hitting it because people won't get it the first time, right? It's after the 11th, 12th, 20th that they start actually hitting them. So if we all work together and just start sharing this out, just like if we start, getting backing the social proof channel and start calling up these stations and courts, these fake courts, and asking them these questions, what they really are, and getting them to answer it. You will get a lesson in life yourself when you do it. When you hear the actual real life response where they say, I don't know, I've never thought about that. It's a moment, where you're actually holding your breath going, I can't believe you just said that, right? Someone who carries weapons doesn't know why they are and how they got to that position. They have no idea, and that's terrifying when you actually hear them say that. And so, we've got some of that social proof. Hopefully we're going to cover that next week, because I did send you those voice files. And you're going to hear, what these people who work in courts and police stations, what they actually have to say about how little they know about the true responsibility that they carry and the consequences for that, how little. It's really terrifying, guys. And so we need to all work together, so we can get more and more of this evidence, so we can get it out, guys, because we are the media. So we need to actually work like media and be organized. And so this is an opportunity to jump on these channels, guys. Carl's put them up in the chat here, and start working together and be the new media that gets the truth out, not the fake version, but the actual one that's verifiable. So I'm hoping you guys are willing to jump on and be part of the solution.
Daniel, I'm very keen to learn more about your quantum grammar and how you smashed ACAT with it in 5 minutes. Can you email me, carl@vofhq.com, and we will hook that up. I'd be interested in getting you on for a bit of a chat, and if you can show me through that and we can share it with people, I'm sure a lot of people would be interested to learn what syntax grammar is all about. I have a basic limited understanding of it and look forward to hearing what you have to say. What are your thoughts on it, Fitz?
Well, I've actually even listened to the guys from Justinian in Deception, where they actually confronted, what's his name, David Wynn-Miller, and they said, look, we can't find this in any of those styles manuals. So to us, this is not even a legitimate language. This is a made-up one, and he didn't answer the question. So just a little bit of food for thought for you guys. Just think about that. That's all I'm going to say on it. I'm not going to go any further.
Yep. Beautiful. Open minds, always up for open minds. Spanky, thank you very much. The pen is certainly mightier than the sword. Fitz, thank you. That ends episode, 28? God, who knew we'd get this far?
Yeah, we're climbing up to 30 real quick.
Yep, and we are only 3 minutes over the hour. That's got to be one of the quickest ones yet.
Yeah, it's a new record.
Yeah, all right, mate. Look forward to it. We're getting back into that document again next week, although I dare say a lot of people will have read it. If you missed it, it is posted in the chat, so links to it are posted in the chat. But we'll get back into that document again next week in lesson number 29.
Yep, looking forward to it. It's a really good reveal, guys, so hopefully you can stick around for that and really see the intricacies of how this whole movement on every version has been smashed and how cleverly it's been done.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, mate, thanks very much. Look forward to chatting with you next week.
It's a pleasure, Carl. Thanks, everyone, for joining in again. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye now.
Cheers, buddy. And thank you, folks, for being part of tonight's show. Really look forward to having your company on Monday nights for our Magna Carta show, and we've got quite a few viewing online tonight, so that's fabulous too. If you are interested at all in becoming a member, it is very simple, very easy, and you don't get anything special for doing it other than a warm, squishy feeling for helping to keep the voice of freedom on the road. We will come up with some members deals a little bit later on. Certainly you'll get discounts on merchandise when we actually have any merchandise to sell, and T-shirts is another story. But if you'd like to become a member, please visit vofhq.com, skip across the menus across the top, and you'll find one for memberships. Go in there, put in your details, and become a member. We'd love to have you. If membership's not your thing, but you'd like to donate a few bucks, there is a donate button on that page too, which goes on to help us. Tomorrow night, Spiros is coming on the show, and we have a number of questions already that have been emailed through to me. Now, if you have a legal question, now it can be about the freedom movement, it can be whatever. If you've got an overhanging tree branch from the next door neighbor, or there's leaves in your yard constantly and it keeps dropping palm tree fronds in there or whatever, loud neighbors, arguments over fences, you name it, we will discuss it. If you've got a question and you don't want to go to a lawyer and pay whatever it is to ask the question and hear an answer, then why don't you email it? carl@vofhq.com. Put in the subject line question for Spiros, and I will make sure that we put it in tomorrow night's show. We will get that underway at 7:30 tomorrow night. Looking forward to that. Got to catch up with Darren Bergwerf again. Might have him on the air for the Friday free-for-all, wherever that will be from. And there's a couple of other guests I'm trying to line up this week too. Cass Smith will be one of them, because there has now been a little bit of a call for self-managed super funds. There is a lot more information coming out in mainstream media, a lot more advice, and there seems to be a lot more people going for it. If it's something you are considering, if you've got some doubts about how secure your money will be in the bank, or the fact that it is fiat money, and what's going to happen when the fiat system crashes, then the easiest and safest thing you can do with your super is get it out of Big Super and put it into gold and silver. If that's something that interests you, then email goldandsilver@vofhq.com, and that'll go straight through to Cass Smith and her team at Freedom Financial Solutions. And if you are that way inclined, they'll send you a bit of information. You make up your mind from there whether or not you want to turn your money, your wealth, if you like. If you want to regain control of your wealth from Big Super, then she's going to help you out with that. And if you're like me, you've only got a little bit of super, and it's not really worth trying to get it out, because the fees would be staggering, and you would wind up with less than half of the money that you have in there. That's my case. Well, then come together in a self-managed super fund group. Now, you don't have to know the people that you are in the self-managed super fund with. Do you know the people that you're in your big super fund with? No. So the fact that it's self-managed doesn't really mean much, because Cass Smith will explain to you the way that it all works. But you can have varying different sums all added together in this one self-managed super fund. And then, therefore, when it is all pulled out, you only attract one set of fees. That's my theory behind it. There might be a bit more involved in that, but questions are best directed to the lady who knows the answers, rather than me, who makes things up as he goes along. So, yeah, email gold and silver, that's GOLDANDSILVER, at VOFHQ.com. And we'll make sure that Cass gets your inquiry on that one, and they can answer any questions you may have going forward. Thank you very much, folks, for your continued indulgence with the Voice of Freedom. And there is certainly some interesting things happening in the world. Donald Trump had a big rally over the weekend. There was a bit of talk about Intel coming out in that. I haven't had the opportunity to go over it yet. I hope to, maybe later tonight, and tomorrow at some stage I'll have another little live, and we'll discuss some of those interesting things. I've also been collecting a huge range of very interesting intel that's been sent to me over the last 3 days. We'll cover this tomorrow as well, but we did mention that there were some strange boxes being put around Hobart Hospital, around the morgue area of the Hobart Hospital, big air-conditioned containers, I guess is the best way of describing them. We'll have some news and some pictures on those in tomorrow's show too. And a couple of other interesting little tidbits from around the world. So thank you very much for folks being in here tonight. Oh, I've missed somebody. Sunflower, thank you so much for your super sticker. You are a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful woman. I'm looking forward to the hug when we catch up. Have yourself a wonderful night. Yep, Sunflower never believed in super funds. No, there's a lot of people who don't believe in them. And, well, it hasn't worked for me, put it that way. So I have no reason to believe in them at all. David, you're making an interesting point there. Good luck with the dry thunderstorms that look like they're heading towards Tasmania. I think that's where you are. And that wasn't good. I just pushed something out. Storms, dry storm coming to Tasmania. Lightning strikes, never a good thing, particularly as things are very dry. I've noticed that around Canberra here too, although there was a bit of rain here earlier, and now it's got quite steamy for a bloke who comes from Queensland. You can see I'm starting to develop a little sweat tune. So weird. Anyway, folks, have yourself a wonderful time. Next time we chat, I'll be somewhere other than in Canberra. Couldn't actually tell you where exactly I'm going to be at the moment because, well, that'd be telling. But rest assured, if there are dickheads out on the road, we'll be avoiding them.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay?